Okay. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our discussion on returning to work. I'm Jorel Guzman, Director of Membership and Operations at Newlab. Many of you might be familiar with Newlab, but others may be encountering our work for the first time today. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are not familiar with Newlab, we are a community of experts and innovators applying transformative technologies to solve the world's biggest challenges. Through our membership and studios, we bring together entrepreneurs, engineers, inventors, and industry leaders to create sustainable solutions and enterprises. We employ technologies, including robotics, AI, and material science, to transform what matters most: health, environment, media, cities, and infrastructure. In this session, you will hear about Newlab's Return to Work Studio, which we launched in response to COVID-19 and the challenges it poses for the workplace. The studio is a live sandbox and pilot program for frontier technologies that helps create work environments and provides critical learnings for organizations across a range of sectors looking to responsibly return people back to work. You will hear from two Newlab members, Pat Collins, who is the Chief Product Officer at Norbert Health, and Sean Peterson, CEO at StrongArm Technologies. Hello, Pat.
Hello, Jorel. How you doing?
How's it going? And then we have Sean also on the line.
How are you?
Hi. Now, I thought that we could get the conversation started by taking us exactly 1 year ago, when New York State issued a shelter-in-place order for most office workers, and this whole concept of working remote from work really started as the COVID-19 infection rate was rising exponentially across the state. Those definitely were some very, very dark days for New Yorkers. We remember those well. But in Newlab, there was a lot of positive energy and momentum at that point in time. And Sean, can you take us back to those early days in March? What was happening at StrongArm and in the Newlab community overall back then in early March?
I think you nailed it. And in terms of saying it's energy, and it's energy for people that really just want to do good and help. And a lot of that manifested itself in the creators and the makers and the entrepreneurs that exist in Newlab that were looking to leverage their supply chains to do something as simple as help hedge the crisis of PPE that we had. There were individuals then going in and making face masks. Then it got even further and people started making the incredible respirators that you produced. All of this energy was, to say the least, inspiring. And as we all participated in this event, we slowly started to recognize how can StrongArm as a business add into this asset, because there are so many good people in this way. And we started to think of ways in which we can not only help folks in the broader community, but really, how can we help these people at Newlab get into the building and do things safely and do it in the right way? And I believe that partnership and that energy was something that created the opportunity to show the world what we can do and that we can combat this thing in our own small way.
Yes, fantastic. I remember those days exactly. And for those of you who don't know, Newlab is a community of over 170 companies and more than 800 members. And it was so invigorating at that time to see the community pull all of their resources together, again, as Sean mentioned, to create face shields, face masks, to bring a ventilator to the market. But Sean, again, talk to us a little bit more about StrongArm. So what is StrongArm? Tell us about the Fuse sensor and how it was originally developed to help the physical safety of industrial athletes. And how did you think about then pivoting the product in order to contribute to what was clearly a huge social problem and at the moment?
Absolutely. StrongArm Tech is an industrial safety science company, and our goal is to create a better future for industrial athletes or blue collar workers. And in our environments or manufacturing, warehousing, and logistics operations, where we are seeing individuals put their bodies on the line, throwing themselves into jobs that are highly repetitive, and to find that there has not been a single bit of change in the way that their day-to-day is in terms of the risk that they see in over 40 years. So we found that the way to do that is to align incentives, and the way we do that is by driving data. We drive data that helps keep people safe. And what we found at StrongArm is that injuries happen fast, and StrongArm needs to be faster. So when COVID came around, we simply wanted to be helpful. And being able to have the benefits of a connected IoT platform, our small sensors are simply the way to connect to the heartbeat of that individual, that industrial athlete. And what we typically do is would send alerts to that individual that the sensor picks up through haptic feedback and avoid an injury. But in the case of COVID, we were simply able to reconfigure our algorithms and promote alerts when two users would come in contact with each other. That not only allowed us to encourage social distancing through haptic feedback and through reminders and through behavioral change, but in fact, it also allowed us to do contract tracing. Because we're built in a time series database, we're truncating the times in which it would take to go back and find which individuals were there. The goal here is to get people back to work safer. And what we found is that through our studies with Newlab, within the first week, human-to-human interactions dropped by 65%. And by the end of the second week, human-to-human interactions dropped by 98%. So we're able to rapidly deploy a scalable solution, prove it out at scale with Newlab in an environment that is safe, an environment with intelligent individuals that are driven around product changes and provided a great deal of insight. And then we're able to deploy that to the greater ecosystem of our clients, which are the 3PL and logistics businesses that are, quite frankly, the supply chains that are keeping our country running at this time. So that's how the project culminated and where it took off.
That's amazing, Sean. And so you were working really with your core product and then just thinking about, okay, well, how can we amplify its existing capabilities to support your existing using base? And then how can Newlab serve, almost as a test bed to be able to pilot test that before you could roll over the solution to the market? And, taking it over to Pat now, Norbert Health was also involved in early conversations at the very beginning in terms of launching a pilot here. What was your original product vision for Norbert Health? And then how did the pilot impact the development of that product vision after?
Yeah, thanks, Sorrel. I mean, that's the interesting thing. Our vision of the product, back in 2019 was that, you'd have sensors in your home, in your workplace, in public places, in restaurants that would, continuously or frequently monitor your health, right? The way the world works today is in order to get any kind of picture of your health, you have wearables now that are not super convenient, but you typically go to a doctor, right? Mm-hmm. So our vision of the product was that we would have sensors that would continuously or more frequently monitor the health of people, right, at home or at work or in the enterprise. So COVID hits, right, and all of a sudden that becomes pretty important, right? Is to understand in many settings and specifically return to work. Is someone coming through the door? Do they have an infection? Do they have a fever? And so, we quickly realized that, our product had value a lot faster than what we had anticipated. And then, really working closely with you, Jarrell, was fantastic. You guys really helped shape the early part of the product, right? So, we developed, what was sort of a prototype that's now evolved over the last 6 months into something that is, a really usable product and adding, more features as we go along.
Thanks for that, Pat. And we have many folks in the audience today who have a keen interest in technology in particular. Can you talk to us a little bit about the key technologies that are in a Norbert Health product? So what are those technologies that are driving the product?
Yeah, so we, first of all, it's an IoT device, right? We have a device as well as a cloud and a mobile app, right? So that device is packed with a lot of different sensors that I won't go into and bore everyone with, but new technologies and some patented technologies that allow us to measure vital signs and other health indicators of people that you normally wouldn't be able to, right? So so that's that. But the real, the important part of the product is really the software and the intelligence of the product that we're building, right? We have machine learning algorithms and a number of other algorithms that allow us to take the data from those sensors and really make sense of it and turn it into something that's usable.
That's great. Pat. Thank you for elaborating there. And Sean, from a technology standpoint also, how does the fuse sensor work exactly? So you mentioned before that generally the fuse is worn over the body. And then if you come into contact with someone who is within a certain distance, then it will emit certain vibrations. But tell us a little bit more about how the sensor works and how did you decide on the best approach to introduce additional product features that could facilitate social distancing in particular?
Absolutely. I think that the way we addressed it again is the fact that these injuries happen so quickly and you don't always understand the environments that you're in. So the way that we generate the hardware is really a servant to the data, a servant to the cloud. Also being an IoT device, we need to understand the nuances of the day-to-day, the risks that an individual goes through. So the way that our approach is with hardware is that we should build that for the need of the user, and it shouldn't be the way that we lead into the market. So the way that we find the best use case for this is, quite frankly, interacting with industrial athletes. And we started out with a very high horsepower sensor that had every single thing inside of it that would understand the risk an individual will go through throughout the day. Heat, humidity, air quality, proximity, ergonomic challenges, and IMU, all these things that you would anticipate would burden the industrial athlete throughout the day or throughout the longevity of their career. And through time, you learn what is invasive and what's not. Things like GPS, things that we don't need inside of it. We don't want to know how long you are on your cigarette break for. We simply want to know how close you are and what duration you are within proximity to risk. So with that mindset, switching over to COVID became a dynamic exercise, but one that was really straightforward, one that was very familiar for us. We're constantly helping these industrial athletes navigate through these risky environments. And we do that by simply tapping them on the shoulder in a way. And that is how the sensor operates. So when COVID came around, we said, let's keep something simple, something that has just enough of a behavioral incentive to it. And through time, what we learned is that the haptic patterns didn't need to be as aggressive. We learned about the interactions of individuals, and we were able to program the way that our information is delivered to that person, or in this case, in a very urban environment inside a Newlab, where we're working with folks who are giving us this feedback rapidly. And I think that's where Newlab was so key to that. You didn't need to alert you every 2 seconds. It's a message that you get. And from that, we create a product. We create something that people love and enjoy, and basically providing peace of mind at the end of the day. And using our platform to do so has enabled us to deploy this particular solution to 25,000 people.
That is amazing. So 25,000 people reached and benefiting from the product deployment there. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the data that was collected and then how is it used? And I'm interested in hearing both your traditional fuse sensor as well as the layer that you built later to facilitate social distancing in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first set of data was very simple, right? Encouraging behavioral incentives that got us to that place where we reduced human-to-human interactions by 95% on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. From then it was about contact tracing. So providing solutions for people to be able to shift through that insight immediately, right? We know down to a fraction of a second how long you were exposed to an individual, and we know how to get that information in a matter of minutes. So being able to have that ability to fight fires before they happen is truly key. So now that we're driving and trying to find further insights, and again, it's about behavioral incentives and putting the information in a way that people will ingest it, right? StrongArm's whole goal is to give safety a seat at the decision-making process at an operational level. And in this case, it's now about how do we change workflows in order to discourage some of this human-to-human interaction again. And we're able to simply create a heat map by placing beacons in congested areas like the restroom, the break room, the cafeteria, areas where you may even, we're able to remap congestion and we're able to alter passive contact. Taking that a step further, now it's almost the way that we're trading workstations as well. There are some areas where the opposite happens, where you just know you cannot be 6 feet away from someone at all times. And that is just the reality of the situation. So what we do is we try to make sure that those alerts are promoted so individuals are wearing PPE, but we numb them after a while, right? We turn those off because that individual doesn't need to be buzzed every 10 seconds for a 30-minute period. And it's those types of interactions that are key because you need users to have the sensor on, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. And making a product that people can enjoy is the way to get there. And luckily, we had Newlab as a test bed to help refine that before we deploy.
Yes, I'm just remembering some of the early feedback that we've received from our members when they started using the product. And I was a user myself. And, you know, even at the height of the pandemic, it was very easy to just lose that sense of awareness that you had to maintain distance from another person, because we're social beings. We like to interact with close, we like to hug. And so, you know, having a device worn on your body gave this sense of, you know, almost security, where, you know, it was this reminder that you had as a haptic alert that would say, hey, you know, you're about to do something that could potentially be harmful to you, even though your instinct is going and getting close to the person and interact. I'd love to hear some from Pat also. You know, one of the trends that we saw both with Strong Arm and then with Norbert Health is how quickly it was to really bring this new, you know, kind of product to the market. And hardware is known for being hard in terms of doing that and, you know, kind of having a short timeline to market. So what do you think were some of the elements that were present in this pilot that allow you to deploy so quickly and then get to a point now where you have a new version of the product that is actually being sold?
Yeah, well, I think the timing for us was fantastic, right? You know, we had started later in 2019, right? So we had time. You know, the hardware version that we were developing and deploying at the time was pretty much ready, right? Like you said, it takes a long time to do hardware, and you know, from our standpoint, doing hardware is kind of our DNA. You know, my background is doing hardware for many years. So, you know, I would advise any startup that is even thinking about doing hardware, they should always have somebody in the team that has, you know, deployed millions and millions of devices, because it's important to be able to, you know, to get really quickly to market. Otherwise, you're just going to continue to, you know, kind of spin. But anyway, back to your question. Yeah, the most important thing was getting the timing right? And so that worked out really well for us. I think, you know, it was an early prototype, and we were already working on our second prototype, which you know, you guys really helped us. You know, the Newlab team really helped us kind of understand a few things that maybe didn't work correctly, or you know, we could improve on. So getting it into the wild early was a big advantage for us, for sure.
Yes, I remember those days when we were, you know, kind of working hand in hand and then trying to figure out, okay, what does that administrative dashboard looks like, right? Where, yeah, you know, there's someone who's monitoring, and it was, you know, really great to be able to work with your team there. And likewise, Sean, so, you know, I'm just remembering the time when we began this conversation to the time where there was actually the pilot started, and then, you know, the iterative process that, you know, Strong Arm pursued in order to bring in the reporting layer. So I'm just curious about, what do you think were the elements from a, you know, kind of company perspective, operational perspective, that allow you to be able to bring those new features and then, you know, enhance the product in such a short period of time? I believe, if I recall correctly, it was 3 weeks.
Yes, it was. It was 3 weeks. And I would like to say that all things are rosy and clear, but you do have to deprioritize, I think, in some way. But that is just a bandwidth issue. Beyond that, it's just the way the platform is built. And I think that is very true to everything that we see in terms of this changing environment of risk. And we have built our platform in order to be able to be susceptible to that change, right? Injuries happen faster, Strong Arm is faster, and we have to really lead that kind of mantra all the way through, because you can't predict what's going to be the next thing on the horizon. And the way that this worked out for us is just that it happened to be the best solution is to keep people away from each other. And luckily that we have the hardware to do that. And we thought, hey, let's just step up and try to address this in a way that we can be supportive of each. So the last key ingredient of that at the end of the day is the team. It's a team who is passionate about this. It's a team that is, quite frankly, we're remote, we're growing. I mean, it's a scary time to be a startup, but the team didn't blink an eye, jumped into it and worked through the night and was able to deliver the solution, like you said, in about 2 weeks. Refined it, so we had our bugs fixed and then delivered it to Newlab in 3 weeks.
Yes, I remember those times. It's actually, a pretty large team working on this, getting the products over to the site, figuring out how we would connect them. And then, having all of the community input and willingness to be able to try this out before, you decided to go into market with this. And then, Pat, I'm curious also to, hear you think about kind of the future of Norbert Health more, right? So now that there's a vaccine in the market, still there is a lot of concern about coming back to the workplace, and employers are really interested in understanding what are innovative solutions that are in the market to be able to facilitate a safe return to work. And there are so many elements in Norbert Health that can do that, right? Starting with measuring temperature. But what are you guys working on? What is, kind of the future of Norbert Health, particularly in terms of how healthcare is delivered moving forward after this experience that we had a year of living with a pandemic?
Yeah, so first of all, Jarrell, our original vision for the company was more of a consumer-focused product, right? That we would be in homes. Our original target market was, aging in place, which we thought our product would help. Originally, people help age in place, right? So when the pandemic hit and we deployed at Newlab, and we have other, many other deployments now, what we started finding was, and that was just for doing temperature screening, right? But as we started talking to our customers and learning more from our customers, specifically, especially certain segments of industry, understanding your workers' health is actually a really, really important thing. And that was, something that we didn't really think about. But you talk to a food distribution company or any company that relies on their workers being productive day in and day out, it costs billions and billions of dollars, right? When you have people sick, or even worse, when you have someone that comes to work who's sick, who's like pushing through the day or pushing through a couple of days, and they end up infecting 10 people with the flu. So productivity diminishes very, very quickly. So as we're talking to these companies, we start learning, wow, there's a real use case here for employers to understand their workers' health. I think that's one thing specifically for enterprise. And the second thing is, having sensors or having a way for an employee to get an easy health check when they're in the office creates sort of this sense of, we care about you, right? We care about your health. We have a lot of companies have wellness programs, but they're kind of like once a year. But to have something in enterprise that allows people to, get a better picture of their health, for free, real time, is pretty neat. And we're getting that feedback big time. So, so where our original focus and vision for the company remains, right? Ultimately, our belief and our goal is that every home and many public places will have all these sensors around that will have more frequent and understanding of your health. What we're seeing is that the traction is here and now in the enterprise and in the workplace. So, so that's kind of our, immediate focus and vision. Now, the idea of getting a health scan or understanding your vital signs on demand or on a real-time basis has a lot of value, and it's great, right? But, what we see is that over time, the more frequently, the more often you understand or you collect that data, ultimately, our algorithms, machine learning, as we get smarter and as, our processes get smarter, we'll start to be able to identify and detect subtle changes in those vital signs or those vital health indicators that will help, predict ultimately, maybe somebody has a propensity for, something that they never would have known before, right? So that's how we see it. And ultimately, at this point, we're focused on helping enterprise return to work. We're also focused on helping hospitals understand on a more real-time basis patients who have been discharged from the hospital ultimately we see our product, really being used by healthy people as well to understand and sort of predict, what positive health outcomes and negative health outcomes as well, will occur, to healthy people as well.
That's so great to hear, Pat. Yes, and so kind of like the vision here is, okay, how can we incentivize and promote healthier workplaces? And then you quoted there some, really important numbers in terms of what it could cost a company to have a workforce that is not as healthy, right? Or, in terms of productivity. And, interesting to think about the connection there back to StrongArm, whose, product really tackles, the same issue. So curious to hear then from Sean there, what are some gains that you have seen for your industrial athletes over the years of having the Fuse wearable in the market, getting back to this idea of healthy and safe workplaces?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and to ride off what Pat said here, we're in a world right now where we don't know what we don't know, but we have the technology to know it. And it's our job as businesses to take all that insight that we derive from these amazing pieces of technology, take all that information, but drive them into actionable insights. And if you do that correctly, you create aligned incentives and peace of mind. So as we take that attitude and approach to our clients, our industrial athletes are our big C customers. And focusing on getting them a seat at the decision-making table is how we create a greater ecosystem. So what we do is we take this complex insights of data and we drive insights that reduce the cost of injury. We then take that ability to show an ROI, and we ask our clients not to just take the dollars and tuck them away on the bottom line, but invest in a way that can support the supply chain, invest in pieces that not only help your operations increase their productivity and throughput, but are doing it in a way that's also supported the industrial athlete, investing in ergonomic equipment, investing in new processes and protocols and training, designing work shifts differently, using the safety score, all the types of things that we're unlocking after we have the buy-in from that approach. So the results that we have seen are that we typically reduce injuries, the cost of injury, right? The actual dollar cost by 45% year over year. $3 trillion a year is spent on this, so that's a massive number. But we are able to take that even further and drive it down through COVID. And as we're providing new insights, we're seeing that the supply chain, 3PL and logistics overall, they are the hero. Those are the frontline workers outside of our healthcare workers, right? Because they are the ones keeping food on our shelves when we're all locked indoors. And that industry saw a 50% uptick or 150% uptick in throughput in some cases in some of our clients across the board. So where does that burden sit? It sits on the shoulders of the industrial athlete. So that person is now literally carrying the load of the things that we now have to do logistically. And in e-com is just not ready yet. Now you're seeing massive injections of capital in there because of it. And what do? At StrongArm is we support the industrial athlete through those times. So as we're seeing this rapid change across the board, industry injury rates are near 35% higher than they've ever been. And our clients are seeing a 20% lower rate than they've ever been beyond what we've already approved. So we're showing that we can not only help promote the right types of information, but if you're all on the same page, if we're aligning incentives and we're creating peace of mind and we're injecting safety into the decision-making process, your business can be nimble and it can spin around the right pieces that need to be protected, which are the most sensitive, precious, but intelligent part of the supply chain, which is the industrial athlete.
That is amazing. 45% reduction of in injuries. Quite a remarkable achievement. And then also to hear where the industry trends are in terms of just more increase in injuries overall versus what your own clients are experiencing. And then that just gets at the heart again of just, really applying technology in the right way to support safer environments. So thank you for giving that insight there, Sean. We have actually 1 minute left. And I was hoping that we can have the opportunity to ask just one question from the audience that was sent to us. So this one here, one question about privacy. So both of your companies are consistently collecting data through your devices. So what safeguards do you put in place in order to ensure that privacy is protected?
Sure. At StrongArm, we start right at the heart of the issue. So we actually ask all of our clients to sign a safety pledge. And what it says there is that we find that that data is somehow back channels and used for punitive action, punitive action against an industrial athlete. We'll actually roll it up to the job type. So immediately we have a safe gap right there. But truthfully, the way that we've designed the insights and the information is so that we are leading with a safety score. So privacy is something that comes along with alignment, again, of incentives. But again, stopgaps are GDPR compliant, ISO certification, and the ability to anonymize right at the gate. But the truth of the matter is, if we are, again, taking all these complex issues and all these complex things that we drive in with these new forms of technology and translate them into actionable insights, we control the narrative. So we're making sure the clients aren't falling off the rails. And that's our duty, is to make sure that they don't go and try to manipulate data and use cases to get the most out of people. It's our job to take that insights and make sure we're showing it how it can be transformative to an organization if you look for a new way to manage. Manage with a score, manage with a metric that's based on the physiology and the capabilities of an individual. And we are very bullish on that narrative. And that is how we are succeeding, because it's about transparency and peace of mind, right?
Yes, it's all about supporting the industrial athlete. And again, love the idea of just bringing back your core customer into the conversations and letting the data drive that narrative and drive those decisions. Pat, would love to hear as a closing remarks, kind of what Norbert's work is in terms of protecting the data of, the users.
Yeah, I think Sean hit all the touch points, right? As the gates, you kind of start from the gates and you make sure you adhere to those. I think we take it one step further. There's medical data, right? There's personal medical data that we're collecting. So just from a tactical standpoint, we made a decision very early on that we would host all of our data, all of our algorithms on the device itself, right? So, you can argue that you can make a cloud, secure enough where you don't have to do that. We decided to take the approach and take it one step further that, we'll push some anonymous data to the cloud, but we want to give users and our customers and healthcare providers who are consuming that data the option that if they do not want to leave, if they do not want that data to leave not just their premises, but that particular device, then we give them that option.
Thank you for that, Pat. And on that note, I want to thank you both for joining us today and taking the time out of your busy days building your companies to just share it out with the community at South and Southwest. And thank you for everyone also who joined us in the audience today. You can get in touch with us via newlab.com. Thank you.